You can make it live.
One good move makes all the difference. The best way to predict future is to create it. Take a move. Create a future. Join Shobit University.
As a young citizen of India, armed with technology, knowledge, and love for my nation, with a vision of transforming India into a developed nation, I'm joining Shobit University. What about you?
First of all, a very good morning to all of you. I, Prashant Kumar, Associate Professor and Head, School of Education, welcome you all in the fourth session of 7-day webinar series on relevance of Gandhian thoughts in modern era. Shobit University Gangho and Harijan Sevak Sangh are organizing this webinar series jointly. It gives me immense pleasure and pride to state that today Shobit University is celebrating its foundation day. Shobit University has made its place among the top universities of the country within a few years. Our university symbolizes the determination, dedication, and commitment of our dynamic chairman, Dr. Shobit Kumar sir, to turn the potential of our youth into reality. Every year we celebrate University Day on his birthday. Sir, your sincerity inspires us. Your hard work motivates us. You set a great example for all of us. Happy birthday, sir. Now, I again welcome you all in the fourth session of this webinar series. Today's topic is relevance of Gandhian thoughts for Indian higher education. This is very relevant in the light of National Education Policy 2020. Education is fundamental for achieving full human potential, developing an equitable and just society, and promoting national development. We can't ignore the thoughts of Gandhiji when we make any policy on education. Gandhian thoughts are more relevant rather than before. Now, without taking too much time, I would like to invite respected Registrar, Professor Mahipal Singh sir, for welcome address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Prashant. Very good morning to one and all present here in this webinar. It's my privilege to welcome you all on behalf of entire Shobit family on the fourth session of 7-day webinar series on relevances of Gandhian thoughts in present era. Respected Kumar Shekhar Vijayendra ji, Honorable Chancellor Shobit University, respected keynote speaker Professor Dr. Suranjan Das ji, Vice Chancellor University Kolkata, Dr. Shankar Sanyal ji, President All India Harijan Sevak Sangh, Delhi, all deans, faculty members, dear students, and other participants. First of all, I welcome to Professor Suranjan Das, who is Vice Chancellor of the Jadavpur University. We are grateful to you, sir, for accepting our invitation and inspiring your valuable time. So, sparing your valuable time, your blessing words on Gandhian thoughts for higher education shall be valuable. Thanks a lot, sir, for joining with us. I heartily welcome to Honorable Chancellor Kumar Shekhar Vijayendra ji for your blessing with motivating and inspiring words. Dr. Sanyal ji does not require a formal introduction. You are very instrumental on this webinar series on the relevances of Gandhian thoughts in present era. My sincere welcome to you, sir. At last but not the least, I sincerely welcome to all the respected participants present on this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, respected sir. Now, I would like to invite Honorable Chancellor Shobit University, Shri Kumar Shekhar Vijayendra sir, for addressing the audience with a very brief introduction, sir. Kumar Shekhar Vijayendra sir is the co-founder and the Chancellor of Shobit University, India, and a leading social entrepreneur. He is the co-chairman of the National Council of Education of ASSOCHAM, India's oldest apex chamber of commerce and industry. He is also actively associated with many social organizations. Sir, you are a Gandhian social speaker, poet, and a painter also. Honorable sir, please.
Thank you very much, Prashant. First of all, on behalf of myself and Shobit University, I wish everybody happy Guru Purnima, a very auspicious day. Gandhi and education. This is what we wish to talk today. And to talk about Gandhi and education, I believe better than Dr. Suranjan Das, the Vice Chancellor of Jadavpur University, we couldn't have anybody. A person who is leading a university which is a pride of our education system and who had been instrumental in many things. If I believe you will be reading his biodata and we will know more about him. Thank you, Dr. Das, for joining us today. It is indeed an honor. Dr. Sankat Sanyal Saab, a Gandhian, a man behind this webinar series, where we are talking about the relevance of Gandhian thoughts in modern era. The idea behind this complete webinar series, a 7-week webinar series, is to give an opportunity to our youth to revisit Gandhi, to understand that how relevant he is even today. Today, we will be talking about education and Gandhi. And recently, when Honorable Minister of Education declared new education policy 2020, during one of the conversation, I said, thank you, sir, for daring to do that. And why I use this word daring to do that? Because in new education policy, we look very deeply, you will find Gandhi everywhere. From last so many years, we are talking about Gandhi, we are speaking about Gandhi, we are calling ourselves Gandhian. But generally, applying Gandhian thoughts in national policies is not happening much. But in new education policy, you will find that so much Gandhi is there that it looks like that it was made inspired by Gandhi. So today we will be discussing on that, and especially during COVID times. We have to see, it is very tough, that diversity, respect for each other, and we identify what are the differences and what are the things, and we work together. Gandhi has given always this message to us. When we talk about education and Gandhi, New Talim comes in. The idea of New Talim, what Gandhi has given, that comes to our mind, where he said education for life, through life, and throughout life. And this education for life, throughout life, it can only happen when education is not limited just for transferring of information. I always believe that there are three very important components in our body: head, heart, and hand. And if head is like to make us intelligent or the information and knowledge creation, the heart is there to make good human beings. And hand is there to apply that knowledge, whatever is there. Gandhi talked about that. He always said that it is application also of knowledge which is important. I'm sure that today's deliberations with Dr. Suranjan Das will give us a new direction, and they will give us a reason to see and understand that education is what serves the society. If you are educated, you have to see that you are not only successful, but your success is contributing in the progress of the society. And this is what was the total idea of Gandhi for education. And I am happy that now the country is also moving towards that mindset, that system of education. So let us now listen to the keynote speaker. And after that, if there will be something I would like to add, I will add later on, because I'm very keen to listen to Dr. Das today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chancellor Sir, for your kind words and insights on today's theme, that is relevance of Gandhiji's thought for higher education. Now, I, Somprab Dubey, Assistant Professor, School of Business Studies and Entrepreneurship, Shobit University, take an opportunity and liberty to invite our learned chief guest and keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Suranjan Das. Before inviting him, let me give a brief account of his introduction before the audience. Professor Suranjan Das is currently associated as Vice Chancellor, Jadavpur University, Kolkata, West Bengal. He is also the honorary professor at the University of Exeter, United Kingdom. He was a professor of history at the University of Calcutta and served that institution both as Pro-Vice Chancellor and Vice Chancellor of the University of Kolkata and Honorary Director, Netaji Institute for Asian Studies, Kolkata. He holds a PhD degree from the University of Oxford and has won acclaim as a specialist in South Asian history and politics, especially in the realms of identity politics, nation building, and Indian foreign policy. He has written and edited 14 books, including 5 major monographs, co-authored 3 volumes, co-edited 5 books, and published 29 articles in referred journals and edited volumes. He has participated and attended more than 50 national and international conferences having a large and diverse spectrum. He was president of the Modern India section of the Indian History Congress 2003 and the general president of the Punjab History Congress 2014. Professor Das is a recipient of national and international academic awards and honors. He has held visiting assignments in institutions of higher learning in Europe, United States of America, and Australia as well. He has been a member of academic and semi-academic delegations to countries of Asia, West Asia, Latin America, Europe, and Australia. He remains associated with the policy formulation bodies for higher education in India. There are a lot of information regarding his career, his achievements, awards, honors, and many more things, but everyone is eager to hear you, sir. Therefore, without taking any more time, I invite you to kindly address the gathering. Over to you, respected sir.
Thank you. Honorable Chancellor of Shobit University, Kunwar Shekhar Vijayendra Saab, the Registrar of the University, Dr. Mahipal Singh, Dr. Prashant Kumar, Mr. Shomprabha Dubey, and of course, Mr. Shankar Sannal Saab. Could I say a very big thank you to Shobit University and Horijan Sevak Sangh for enabling me to participate in this webinar series. When Shankar Sannal Saab invited me to deliver this lecture, I thought, why not speak about Gandhian relevance for higher education today? And when I chose that topic, there were 2 reasons. First, because I've been associated with the higher education system in the country for the last 4 decades. And second, as Honorable Chancellor sir reminded us, that we are in the midst of implementing a new education policy. And I think time has come to understand the relevance of the father of the nation's thoughts on education so far as the new education policy is concerned. I'm also very happy that I'm sharing the panel on this auspicious day for 2 reasons. First, as Honorable Chancellor reminded us, it's a Guru Purnima day. But secondly, this is also the foundation day of Shobit University. And I take this opportunity to wish Shobit University every success in the coming days so that it can reach new milestones in its constant quest for excellence. Thank you very much, Honorable Chancellor sir. Thank you very much, Shankar Sannal Saab, for giving me this opportunity to address this session, which I'm sure will not be academically fruitful for my submission, but it will be academically fruitful after I make the submission and I get the questions and hear from the Honorable Chancellor sir. Now, before I come to the Gandhian thought on higher education itself, let me first identify what are the challenges of higher education in our country. There is no denying the fact that compared to the countries which won independence almost at the same time that India did, which in world history we call the period of decolonization, India has attained significant progress in the realm of higher education. In 1950, there were only 25 universities. Today, we have more than 800 universities. We have more than 12,000 colleges, 35,000 colleges. We have about 11,000 standalone institutions. We have about 1 million faculty members. We have about 36 million students, which make our country having the second largest higher education system in the world after China. And whenever I go abroad, I feel proud that in all international seminars and conferences, the largest delegation from the developing countries from India. You go to the United Kingdom, you look at the National Health Service, many doctors are from India. You go to the Silicon Valley of United States, half the engineers are from India. You go to Europe, in any leading institution, you find a sizable presence of the Indians. So whatever the critics say, India has made significant progress in the realm of higher education, perhaps not compared to the United States, perhaps not compared to the United Kingdom, but compared to the countries which won independence almost at the same time as India. Yet, there are challenges to Indian higher education system. There are challenges to any system. You cannot satisfy the demands all the time. And as in other systems, Indian education system also faces challenges. And as I see it, these challenges to higher education, to the Indian higher education system, can be encapsulated in terms of what I call the 4 E's. The 4 E's. What are the 4 E's? The first E is the E of expansion. Second E is the E of excellence. The third E is the E of equity. And the fourth E is the E of employability. You look at the challenges of Indian higher education system, and most of the challenges fall in these 4 E's that I have just identified. Take the issue of expansion, the first E. As I said, India has made significant progress in terms of higher education. But still, if we look at the gross enrollment ratio, that is the number of students completing their school education and who are entitled to entire higher education, which we call the gross enrollment ratio, India lags far behind many of the countries in terms of the gross enrollment ratio. We have not yet reached the world average. So there's a demand for further expansion of the higher education system. But it is not enough to expand. And today we are speaking about Gandhi. We also need to ensure that the fruits of the expansion, the results of the expansion of higher education should go for the benefit for the broader sections of the society. So here comes the question of equity. According to the 2017-18 All India Higher Education Survey, if we look at the student population in India, only 14% come from scheduled castes, 5.2% from scheduled tribe, 5% from the Muslim community. The female enrollment, even after 75 years of independence, has not reached 50%. So, in terms of access to higher education, there's a lot of work to be done. Gandhi always reminded us, expansion is not enough. We also need to ensure that all sections of the society get advantage of the higher education. So there is a problem of equity. There's also a geographical dimension to the problem of equity in higher education. If we look at the geographical distribution of the higher education in our country, we find most of the institutions of higher education are either based in southern part of India or in western part. And if you move from south to west to east and go to the northeast, the curve goes down. According to one study, if 33% of the educational institution is located in the south, if you move towards the northeast, only 3.5% of the educational institutions are located in northeast part. There's also a dichotomy in terms of the students getting the benefit of the subjects of their choice. There's complete uneven enrollment across disciplines. Again, according to a study, 37% of the students in the undergraduate level are only offered humanities and social sciences. Only 17% of the students can study science. Only 14% of the students can study engineering. Only 4% of the students can study medicine. Only 15% of the students can study commerce. And although India is still a predominantly agricultural economy, not even 1% of the students have access to agricultural sciences, to study agricultural sciences. I'm happy to note from the Honorable Chancellor that Shobit University is offering a course in agricultural science, and not only in agricultural science, but in related science. Therefore, just as we want expansion of education, there is also the challenge of equitable distribution of the fruits of the expansion of higher education. Let me come to the third E, the E of excellence. Yes, there are a number of excellent centers, there are a number of excellent universities. Private universities are coming to the forefront, and Shobit is one of the pioneers in private education. I come from a university which has been listed by the government of India as one of the 10 institutions of eminence. Yet, even after 75 years of independence, there is no university in the country which comes within the first 100 universities of the world. I remember our former president, Pranab Mukherjee, always used to remind any educational gathering that expansion is not enough. We need to go to the top. That top we haven't reached. So there is a problem of excellence. Not only that, you see what has happened in India is that we are creating certain islands of excellence. We have the IITs, you have the IIMs, you have the IESHRs, ISRs. But when you come to the district level colleges, when you come to the district level universities, there's a wide disparity between the teaching learning process being offered in certain selected islands of excellence and the vast majority of the educational institutions. That's a known fact. Therefore, excellence is also an issue. Even in terms of the pursuit of higher degrees, India has to catch up the world. China became a communist state in 1949. We became independent in 1947. Both the countries embarked on higher education almost at the same time. But let me give you a statistics which show how we are still lagging behind China in terms of excellence for higher education. The rate of growth in the number of PhD awardees in China is much higher than to that of India. India's international contribution to patent registration is only 1%. If we look at the global share in science research, India is far behind China. China has crossed the 10% mark. We have just crossed the 4% mark. Therefore, expansion, yes. Equity, yes. But excellence is also a must. Let me come to the fourth E. This is the E of employability. And this disjunction between the knowledge that is imparted in educational institutions and employability of the student, this dichotomy between the two, came to the forefront when few years back, our Honorable Chancellor is here, he is associated with industry. A Confederation of Indian Industries report came out with a startling fact. What was the fact? The fact was only 25% of the technical graduates were employable. Earlier it was 15%, now it has become 25%. They get the degrees, but they cannot be immediately employed in the industries. Therefore, this question of employability of the students is also important. Yes, we should go on excelling in basic sciences and research. But it is also our duty to ensure that when our students go out of the campuses, they can hold their heads high. We can make them contributors to the development of national economy. So this fourth T, the E of employability, is also of crucial importance. I've just identified what I believe are the four major challenges of Indian higher education system. And now I shall try to argue that much of the Gandhian thoughts on education can offer some direction to meet these challenges in the India's higher education system. Writing in the midst of nationalist struggle against the British Raj, Gandhi's main concern was to offer what he called a national alternative to the colonial system of education. He felt that the primary objective of this national education was to prevent his countrymen not to become the colonial slaves. Again and again he reminded us. And therefore, Gandhi envisaged an education which, I quote, would contribute to an all-round development, drawing out the best in child, man, body, mind, and spirit. So that we do not only produce clerks to serve the alien regime, but we can produce students who generate a spiritual and communal life conducive to the creation of holistic individuals. Molded by these basic beliefs, Gandhi emphasized, as our Honorable Chancellor referred to, the notion of Nai Talim, new education. And if we scrutinize Nai Talim, we find two basic elements: Swaraj, independence, and Swadeshi, self-reliance. And I think these two elements are crucial when we also try to meet the challenges of Indian higher education system. Gandhi correctly realized, if we want to develop a correct higher education, merely establishment of higher educational institutions, colleges, universities, research institutions are not enough. But he emphasized that the growth of higher education should also be linked to the growth of an ideal school education. It is the schools which provide the catchment area of the higher education. It is a matter of deep regret that in India, traditionally, when we conceived of reforms of higher education, we completely forgot reforming the school education. Completely going against the Gandhian thought. And therefore, Gandhi, while speaking of higher education, always emphasized that there should be free and compulsory school education for children between 7 and 14 years. And in providing this school education, Gandhi emphasized that education should be related to contemporary environment. It should not be in complete disjunction from the environment from where the students come, from where the children come. Therefore, on 3rd January 1916, Gandhi noted, and I quote, "If therefore you desire to work for the good of India, give primary education to its 300 million people, not the kind of education that goes by that name at present, but such education as will impart to them the knowledge that is required in these times. Teach them why it is that India is growing more and more abject. Teach them the connection between the mode of teaching and social environment." In 1916, he was writing this. And I think these words are still relevant today. Interestingly, this idea of Gandhi finds a clear consonance with the ideas of another great mind of India, Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore. On another occasion, Gandhi wrote, and I quote, "Not less than 85% of India's population are engaged in agriculture. 10% are engaged in various other crafts, and a majority of them are weavers. The remaining 5% belong to the various professions. If these latter really desire to serve the people, they must acquire some knowledge, at least, about the occupations of the 95% of the people." My question is, have our policy framers been able to translate this particular dream of the father of the nation into practice? Perhaps no. Rabindranath tried to do it, because when he established Shantiniketan, he also established Sriniketan, so that students not only have theoretical knowledge, but they also have practical. This is very crucial. The new education policy had hinted at it, but we need to go forward to meet this particular challenge of developing a link between mind and body that Gandhi spoke of. In this connection, Gandhi also emphasized the importance of physical education of the children, of the students. It is again a matter of deep regret that sports education has not improved in India to the extent it should have done. Honorable Chancellor referred to Swami Vivekananda. Vivekananda also stressed that unless a child knows how to play football, he cannot be a good student. Gandhi also emphasized the need of sports, the need of physical education. But interestingly, Gandhi did not support the notion of competitive sports, sports not for competition, that Gandhi emphasized, but sports for the development of the physique, of the development of the mind. You must have heard the name of the famous historian, Professor Ramchandra Guha. And in his 2 volumes of Gandhi, on Gandhi's biography, he quotes a particular passage from Gandhi, which I think is very important. And I quote, this is what Gandhi said: "A sound body means one which bends itself to the spirit and is always a ready instrument in its service. Such bodies are not made, in my opinion, on a football field. They are made in cornfields and farms, unquote. Perhaps this is an idealistic statement today, because today competitive sports like the IPL has become the order of the day. But I think time has come when, in advocating sports education, we need to emphasize competitive element of sports, or the notion of sports as advocated by Mahatma Gandhi. It is interesting that when in 1917 Gandhi was speaking about the link between higher education and school education, today in all pedagogical discourses on higher education, experts are stressing this particular link, particular point. Unfortunately, in India, we have not been able to maintain this link. The new education policy provides an opportunity, but I do not know whether in actual practice we would be able to do it. The other important point that Gandhi stressed was the importance of mother tongue in promoting education. As early as 1912, in the Indian Opinion, Gandhi wrote, and I quote, "Without a knowledge of one's mother tongue, it is impossible to be a patriot. One's ideas became wrapped and hearts exchanged for the motherland. Mother tongue, the religions and literature of India can never be appreciated from the medium of from a foreign language." On 1st September 1921, Gandhi again stressed, and I quote, "The foreign medium has made our children practically foreigners in their own land," unquote. He was convinced, Gandhi was convinced that if education was imparted in a foreign language, the children would neither learn to think on their own or be able to take the knowledge they would gain to the society. He felt that if taught in the mother tongue, they would become creative, develop a pride in national culture and tradition, and be motivated by basic moral values. He wrote, I quote, this was in 1938, "Our language is a reflection of ourselves. And if you tell me that our languages are too poor to express the best of thought, then I say that the sooner we are wiped out of existence, the better for us," unquote. But at the same time, Gandhi was not against the students learning foreign language. He was a great appreciator of foreign literature. And he remained aware of the need for Indians to be exposed to the best developments in foreign language, foreign science, foreign technology, but not at the cost of national culture, national tradition. He wanted to develop a harmony between our national tradition and modern language, modern thoughts, modern technology, modern science. I remember a particular quote from Gandhi where he said, I don't have the exact quote in mind, but that is what he said, that we should allow fresh air to come from the doors and windows to make us think aloud, to make us think anew. But we cannot allow the winds and air coming from the doors and windows to unsettle the foundations of our homes. We are living in an age of globalization, which has made the world a small village. When we were students, the information that we used to get in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, our students today can, at a click of the mouthpiece of the mouse, can get that information in 5 minutes. But at the same time, we should remember that the ground on which we are standing, that ground should not become soft. I give you one simple example. When we were young and we were exposed to the three arts, it started with Tagore, it started with Qazi Nazrul Islam, it started with Premchand, it started with Shukanto, it started with Vivekananda, it started with Vidyasagar. But today, when your child, my child, starts reading, he starts reading Harry Potter or Batman. I'm not against a child reading Harry Potter or Batman. But I like to draw your attention to a small news item that came out 1 year back, where a young child in North India, trying to imitate the Spider-Man, jumped from the veranda of his first floor and lost his life. When I go abroad, I find the students rereading Chaucer, rereading Shakespeare, rereading Johnson, rereading Keats, rereading Shelley. But are we assured that we have been able to instill in our young generation the rich diversity of our national literature? Perhaps not. You know, in some of you who have visited Calcutta, we have the Rabindra Sadan, a wonderful auditorium. And when we were young, on every Potishe Boishak, which is the birthday of Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, we used to go to that auditorium to hear Tagore's songs, Tagore's poetry. Still now, young people go. Last year, a private TV channel made a random survey of the young people there and asked 2 questions. What was the name of the book for which Tagore won the Nobel Prize? And what was the year when Tagore got the Nobel Prize? 70% of the people who were interviewed could not give the correct answer. So yes, we should not become frogs in the well. We should interact with the outside world, but with our heads high. That was what Gandhi wanted. We should not discard tradition. We should not discard our national culture. Our national culture is vast, it's diverse, it's rich. And we should try to drive a harmony between the past and the present so that we can move to a better future. That should be the aim of higher education in our country. That is what Gandhi wanted. On 11 July 1929, Gandhi wrote, I quote, this was in Young India, so-called knowledge of the 3 arts that is at present given in government schools is of little use to the boys and girls in afterlife. Most of it is forgotten inside of 1 year, if only for want of use. But if a vocational training in keeping with the surroundings was given to the children, they would not only repay the expenses incurred in the schools and colleges, but would turn that training to use in afterlife. They would learn manners, have object lessons in practical sanitation and hygiene, all of which they would take to their homes, in which they would become silent revolutionaries. What a wonderful word. Today we are speaking of vocational education. We are spending huge amount of money to promote vocational education. But unfortunately, the ideological basis of vocational education that Gandhi envisaged is perhaps lost. Vocational education is also becoming like any other branch of knowledge, but that is not what Gandhi wanted. So when we talk of vocational education, we should be aware of what Gandhi said. Let me now become, can I sir have 10-15 minutes more?
Yeah, please take your time.
Okay.
It's a pleasure to listen to you.
No, thank you. Let me come to the other challenge, challenge, like challenge of excellence. Gandhi in his own way also addressed this issue of excellence, although in the context of freedom movement. Gandhi made a fundamental point. He said the search for excellence, and I quote, by your educational institutions would not yield fruit unless they emerge as national institutions. National institutions. And what did he mean by national institutions? By national institutions, he meant national institutions which would be able to inculcate, I quote, ideas of communal harmony, pluralism, non-violence, and anti-casteism, unquote. So even if an education institution promotes high level of scientific research, Gandhi felt unless these institutions would promote pluralism, non-violence, anti-casteism, the education they are advocating will ultimately hit a blind wall. And I think that is very, very relevant even today. At the same time, Gandhi wanted institutions to be self-supporting. He did not want the institutions to be completely dependent on government or to any outside agency. Here, I think we need to make a distinction between what we now called self-financing institutions and Gandhi's notion of self-reliance. Self-financing institutions, unless properly regulated, can promote inequity because ordinary students cannot gain access to these institutions. But Gandhi emphasized self-reliance. And what is self-reliance? Self-reliance means that educational institutions should have the autonomy to develop their own courses, their own teaching learning method. And here, he also gave certain prescriptions for the teachers. He said the teachers should have complete freedom in teaching learning. He said that there should be greater value of the living over the printed word. What a wonderful sentence. Greater value over the living than the printed word. That means he urged the teachers not to be dependent on prescribed textbooks. And interesting, this is what the modern thinkers are saying. Pedagogy is important. What is written is not important. Pedagogy is important. And as early as 1930s, what we are thinking today, Gandhi thought, and I quote, a teacher who teaches from textbooks does not impart originality to his pupils. He becomes himself a slave of textbooks and has no opportunity or occasion to be original. It therefore seems that the less textbooks there are, the better it is for the teacher and his pupils, unquote. So today when we are trying to propose a uniform syllabus for the whole country, in such a diversified country, when we are trying to propose uniform textbooks for the whole country, we should be careful about what Gandhi reminded us again and again. I'd also like to make another point. In Gandhian discourse, as the Honorable Chancellor referred to Nai Talim, there is no place for religious education. He was absolutely clear on that. He made a qualitative distinction between dharma, or religion, and basic morality. All throughout his writings, he made up this basic difference between dharma and morality. And he looked at a fundamental equality of all religions while discussing morality. On 21st February 1947, few days before our independence, he wrote, I quote, "I do not believe that the state can concern itself or cope with religious education. I believe that religious education must be the sole concern of religious associations. Do not mix up religion and ethics. I believe that fundamental ethics is common to all religions," unquote. So today in India, when we are grappling with various sorts of sectarian politics, with various sorts of sectarian thoughts, fundamentalist thoughts. This contention of Gandhi, I think, is very, very important. Again, as early as 1932, Gandhi reminded us, I quote, "I hold that the true education of the intellect can only come through a proper exercise and training of the bodily organs, hands, body, eyes, nose, etc." The other important point that I would like to make and to conclude, the two important points. Gandhi's stress on adult education. He believed in continuing adult education, so that everybody at every stage of life, nobody is deprived of education. But in promoting adult education, the way that we are thinking is fundamentally different from what Gandhi thought. When we speak of adult education today, we think extension of the traditional mode of education to adult education. But no, Gandhi said adult education should be to teach good neighborliness and cut at the root of untouchability and the communal problem. Unfortunately, we're not following that particular viewpoint of Gandhi. The other important point that Gandhi mentioned was the importance of women's education, which is of crucial importance today. And I give a quote which shows the importance that Gandhi gave on women's education. I quote, "Man has converted women to a domestic drudge and an instrument of his pleasure, instead of regarding her as a helpmate and better half. The result is semi-paralysis of our society. We owe it to her and to ourselves to undo the great wrong that we have done to her." What a wonderful word. And that, he said, should be done through the promotion of women's education. Let me conclude by making one point, and I'll end with that. Today, in the world as well as in India, there's a trump of market economy. There's a trump of commoditization of knowledge, which are making our students individualistic, commercialized, which are making the students blind victims of competition. But Gandhi did not want that education. He wanted education which would make the students inclusive citizens, so that they can use the knowledge for the greater good. Therefore, he noted, and I quote, he wanted knowledge which should teach the students, I quote, "Wealth without work, pleasure without conscience, science without humanity, knowledge without character, politics without principle are useless." These words, I think, is most important as we move to a new world order, and India has to become a part of the world order. The essence of Indian culture and tradition has been tolerance. Assimilative culture is the keynote of Indian culture. Our Nobel laureate Amartya Sen had reminded us about the argumentative nature of the Indian tradition. And we should teach our students to be argumentative, but not at the cost of violating the democratic principle. I am all for student politics. And Mr. Sannal knows how many times I've been get out. But I always believe in dialogue. I've never called police in my campus. And I've seen by dialogue, by discussions, by deliberations, one can come at a conclusion. That was the message of Gandhi. But at the same time, I would tell my students, of course, you have the right to uphold your democratic right of protest, but kindly do not infringe on the democratic right of others. That should be democracy for all, not democracy for one. We should be argumentative, but within a broad democratic cultural pluralism. And that Gandhi said should be the ideal of higher education. And as we grow up towards a new education policy, as we grow up to a new India, I think these thoughts of Gandhi should be of crucial relevance. Thank you, Mr. Chancellor, sir. Thank you, Mr. Sannan. If I have said something rational, kindly consider them. If you think I have said some irrational words, kindly throw those words outside the window. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Dr. Das. It was indeed one of the best discourse on higher education and Gandhi I ever heard. Thank you very much. Right from expansion to excellence, from equity to employability, your concern about island of excellence, importance of mother tongue and regional languages in education system, from Swami Vivekananda to Rabindranath Tagore to Gandhi, talking about self-reliant and self-financed, the difference, communal harmony, what is important, and the most important thing, the message that those who forget the past glory cannot make a bright future for the present. This is exactly what Gandhi said, and you had wonderful words, very simple way of talking on that. The best message, what I believe the youth can take and must take, that they have to become inclusive citizens. When I say that your progress, if it is your success is, if it is limited to you, it is very myopic. Your success has to contribute in the progress of the nation. And at Shobit University, we always believe our motto is empowering nation through education. It is not empowering individual or making them employable only. One very important thing, what I am sure that some policymakers must also be listening, is independent thinking, especially in pedagogy. Because when I listen these words, minimum common course curriculum will be there in central universities, in state universities. They have to follow this, then they can add something to that. Every teacher has to teach this way only. This is the only way of assessment. Definitely, it kills the complete spirit of education. Because today, in today's world, teachers are co-learners. And the journey of learning cannot be pre-decided. On every step, they have to decide what new has to be learned. And I believe this is what Gandhi was talking about. Gandhi always believed in knowledge democracy, which you explained through equity and expansion. Gandhi always believed in Lok Vidya. And that Lok Vidya is more or less the vocational education, which is completely different from the format what we are trying to do. So it reminds me of a quote of Gandhi. I quote, "The real difficulty is that people have no idea what education truly is," unquote. So many times when we look and deeply into Gandhi and what we are all are doing in education, we feel that we do not know actually what real education the country needs, the people need. And I'm really happy, and it is very surprising. We should go to Gandhi that what new education policy is talking about. Yes, many of the ideas have been taken from Gandhian thought. So many intellectuals, professors, vice chancellors, policymakers, they were sitting together and a policy document came. But if we look at what our gurus said, be it a guru Rabindranath Tagore or Vivekananda or even Gandhi, everything was lying there. We could just have taken from their quotes and we could have made a very relevant, not only national education policy, but a global education policy. So thank you very much, Dr. Das. There are some questions, if time permits. Shall I take those
Please,
questions
please,
for you?
please, sir. Please, sir. Please, sir.
Okay, the most important question which has come to me, and many of the people have written on the same in different words, how can we inculcate the Gandhian values in our youth? One. Two, some fundamental principles of national education policy are recognizing, identifying, and fostering the unique capabilities of each student. How Gandhian values can help to achieve these principles. And the third is Gandhian thoughts on education are relevant forever. In every education policy, it takes place, but implementation is unfortunately not happening much. What to do?
Thank you. Could I start with the last question,
Please
which
do.
I think is extremely important. There is always a gap between theory and practice. And some of the Western philosophers have referred it to praxis. And unless we can relate the theory to practice, whatever principle we adopt, whatever plans we adopt, they will ultimately be wasted. In India, for example, there is no dearth of laws, good laws. There is no dearth of good principles. There is no dearth of good policies. But when it comes to implementation, there's a wide gap. And one way, I think, to bridge the gap brings me to the answering of the second question. And the point that you mentioned, I also stress that only if we can create inclusive citizens, only if we can create inclusive students, then we can have inclusive citizens. If we have inclusive citizens, we create a pressure from below where the policy framers should be forced to recognize the gap between theory and practice and try to bridge the gap and develop a society, a better society to live in. We should have the students who should not only be good in studies, but they should ask fundamental developmental questions like, how do we balance growth and environment? I mean, today we are facing an endemic. That's largely because the pandemic is largely because we have not been able to relate growth with environmental protection. We should have students, we should ask the question, why is it that despite this fundamental progress in higher education, despite the huge money that is being spent in higher education, why there is still a dichotomy in student-teacher ratio? Why is it that, pardon me saying, Honorable Chancellor, sir, our Indian industrialists are putting money in foreign universities to create chairs in Indian studies, but not diverting that money to establish good schools and the colleges? Why is it that we cannot, despite all the good ones, why the 6% of the GDP, which Kothari Commission had mentioned, should be spent for education has not been spent? So unless the students ask these basic questions, I can also relate another question. Unless the students are taught to ask these questions, how do we relate science with society? We have made fundamental progress in biotechnology. But I was reading an article in Economic and Political Weekly the other day, where it shows that only 10% of the researches in biotechnology in our country go to the benefit of the farmers, 90% go to the pharmaceuticals. Why is it? Why is it that despite the fundamental progress in pharmaceutical industry, India has the largest pharmaceutical industry, why is it still now we have the largest number of malnourished children? Why is it still now the basic vaccines for the children, the 4 vaccines, are not being administered, although we are exporting those vaccines outside? So there is a gap between distribution, between production and distribution. How do we bridge that gap? So yes, Gandhian thought becomes relevant, A, to make the students inclusive, to give them a holistic education so that they can ask crucial issues of nation building, not only nation building, but also issues relating to the world politics. Because unless the world becomes peaceful, India cannot become peaceful. Only then the gap between theory and practice can be bridged. And that perhaps enables me to answer that particular question. The second question, the NEP recognition of the unique capabilities of each student. I think there can be a lot of criticisms about the NEP. That, I mean, every policy has plus points, minus points. But I think the basic positive feature of the NEP is the student-centric nature. No other education policy before the NEP has emphasized so much the element of student centricity in education policy. But again, that doesn't mean that just we have become saying student-centric policy, it will become implemented in practice. But we have now an opportunity, we have now an opening. And that opening should be taken advantage of so that A, real opening is created not only for a few microscopic minority of students, but for the broader student community. Finally, how can we inculcate Gandhian values? Gandhian values cannot be inculcated only in education institutions. Charity begins at home. Gandhian values should be inculcated at the home. Here, the parents have to play a crucial role. The schools have to play a crucial role. And here again, the idea, Gandhian idea of adult and continuing education becomes important. Many of the parents, large majority of the parents are not exposed to education. But if we can promote education in the way that Gandhi wanted, adult education in the way Gandhi wanted, inculcation of Gandhian values can start at home. And once it starts at home, it affects the broader society. If it affects the broader society, India becomes beneficial.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Such a articulated and mesmerizing deliberation on the theme. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Shankar Kumar Sanyalji, President of Harijan Sevak Sangh, to please address the session. Over to you, sir.
Please unmute your mic, sir.
I convey a very good morning to all my learned speakers in today's webinar. Let me first pay my best regards to all the scholars, gurus on this auspicious occasion of Guru Purnima. Happy birthday to Dr. Shobhetji and Foundation Day of Savitri University. And we are very much enlightened. The extraordinary speech of Dr. Suranjan Das on the subject is truly worthwhile for the webinar program and greatly beneficial for the purpose we are trying to project last few years. Today is the 4th day of the 7-day webinar series. I extend my thanks to Sri Kunwar Shekhar Bijendraji, the dynamic chancellor of Savitri University and Gandhian background. I also extend my overall respect and thanks to Professor Dr. Suranjan Das, who has served as Vice Chancellor of the University of Calcutta and Jadavpur University, the two most reputed universities of the nation. Today's subject matter, relevance of Gandhian thoughts for Indian higher education. Dr. Suranjan Das very elaborately and very nicely spoke about this subject. I have nothing to say, only few words I want to say. Gandhiji has had adverse opinion in formal education, as was prevalent in his time. He believed that such education makes a man dependent on his circumstances and involves in many unethical activities, which are not compatible with the welfare of the society. He becomes self-seeking robot ready to guard all the truths of the society. Those are available to so-called educated man. Gandhiji concurred with the opinion of Swami Vivekananda that education should be man-making and not mechanical education, should create a sense of self-dependence, such as was also the view of Kavi Guru Rabindranath Tagore. Gandhiji believed that education should create a sense of self-dependence, which would make useful to the community where he lives. For this, education should be combined with the physical and community where he lives, creative activities which not only become paying for him, but also useful to the community. He therefore combined learning with some kind of earning. Gandhiji therefore preferred that education should be dependence along with handicraft. Thus was the concept of basic education, which married education with occupation. This he believed will help the learner to learn creative learning and will help him utilize such learning for his moral uplift and economic security, which was very elaborately told by Dr. Suranjan Das and Chancellor Sri Kunwar Shekhar Bijendra. Government of India accepted the policy of established basic education at the primary level, where students were encouraged to learn through creative activities like making cottage industry products which are useful to the community. The function of education is to create ideal citizen. Ideal means an individual is overwhelming with virtues and is always well behaved. Ideal citizens are the prerequisite for coherent and comprehensive development. The education to produce the best citizens means the education of the hearts of people. This expects education to change the hearts of individuals. Explaining the meaning of genuine education, Mahatma Gandhi says, genuine education does not consist of cramming a lot of information and numbers in mind. Not it lies in passing the examination by reading a number of books, but it lies in developing character. It is a real education which inculcates internal values in human beings. If we can develop such virtues, it will be the best education. Let us hope that primary education, which is the foundation of education system, should flourish and stand on strong footing with better infrastructure and dedicated teachers, both of which are lacking at present. My learned friend and colleague who are associated with education and present today and spoke very nicely about all this subject. I have nothing to say more. With this few words, I once again extend my thanks to all the respected personalities with the eagerness to hear their more words in future in our different webinar and seminars also. Thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Suranjan Das. Thank you, Dr. Bijendra and all other friends. Thank you.
Thank you very much, respected sir. You are the backbone of this webinar series. Now I would like to invite Mr. Somprab Dubey for formal vote of thanks. Mr. Somprab Dubey.
Thank you so much, Dr. Prashant Kumar, for inviting me to propose vote of thanks. I feel honored and privileged to propose the vote of thanks to this August gathering. I, on behalf of entire Shobit University and the entire academic fraternity and on my own behalf, extend a very hearty thanks to our most valued and learned chief guest and keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Suranjan Das. We are extremely thankful for your consent to address this session. Today, we had an opportunity to hear your thoughts on the philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi ji on India's higher education system. We are damn sure that your thoughts will enlighten and ignite our minds and will show us a new path. We are grateful that you shared with us your important findings and opinion on today's theme. Thank you so much, sir. Now I convey my deep regards and gratitude to Honorable Chancellor Sir for making his warm presence in the 4th episode of this international webinar series. Your kind words are always inspiring, eye-opening, and immensely knowledge providing for all of us. We are truly lucky and immensely privileged to have you in every session of this webinar series. We are greatly encouraged and immensely benefited by you, sir. By your blessings and grace, we all are able to make this event a grand success, what it was. Thank you so much once again, Honorable Chancellor, sir. I also wish to express my deep regards and gratitude to Dr. Shankar Kumar Salyanji, President of Harijan Sevak Sangh, for his esteemed presence and never-ending support. Sir, your constant support and never-tiring approach motivates and encourages us. You have been a pillar of strength and support for organizing this international webinar series. Due to your persistent and constant support, this webinar series could become a grand success. Thank you so much, sir. My sincere thanks to respected Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Ranjit sir, respected Registrar sir, Professor Dr. Mahipal Singh, Dr. Prashant Kumar, Head of School of Education, and my fellow colleagues. Now, I also want to thank the people who work behind the scene to execute this event, that is our technical arrangement team, because we know that this type of large scale event cannot happen overnight. It requires planning and bird's eye for every details. We have been fortunate to be supported by a motivated and dedicated technical team. Thank you for all your support. Last but not least, my huge thanks to the audience and participants and students whose presence and active participation made this event a great success. Thank you once again, all of you, for being with us. With these words, today's session comes to an end. Thank you very much. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you. Namaskar, Shraddha. Bhalo থাকবেন সবাই।
Looking forward to meet you sometime in Delhi soon.
Sure, sir. I do look forward, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Namaskar.
you. Thank you, Sanyal Sahab.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Thank you, sir. Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar.